Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't see NAFTA. I wouldn't mind seeing NAFTA, where you'd go by a different name, where you make a separate deal with Canada and a separate deal with Mexico, because you're talking about a very different two countries.
All right, here to help me explain what is in this new preliminary agreement, remember that's what I'm calling it, is Austin Goolsbee, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors for President Obama, currently a professor of economics at the University of Chicago. Austin, the president this morning indicated he's getting rid of NAFTA. Canada's not in this deal. This is the U.S.-Mexican trade agreement. And then he got the Mexican president on the phone who kept talking about NAFTA and kept talking about Canada and really looking forward to having Canada in this whole thing. So they don't seem to be on the same understanding about what this thing is they've agreed to.
Yeah, I couldn't tell that it's really much of anything. I mean, as you know, Allie, what I usually say is every day we don't have a trade war is a good day for the economy. And today we didn't have a
Correct.
If Donald Trump wants to do a small, meaningless adjustment to one sector within NAFTA and first talk to Mexico, well, that's fine. If that keeps him from ranting and raving and starting a trade war, then we should all clap politely and say, oh, good job, Mr. President, and just move on to the next.
Right. The stock market responded well because I think they haven't seen since February when all this nonsense started that, oh, okay, maybe there are things that this president can do that aren't trade warish. The deal doesn't look bad, but as you said, it deals with basically one sector, the auto sector. And it's a small bit of what Trump said he would get if he negotiated with one country as opposed to negotiating with Canada and Mexico. So it's not bad, but it's okay.
It's not good. I mean, it's just a couple of little crumbs. But just to put in context, both Canada and Mexico agreed to far more expansive things that were in the U.S.'s favor to become part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. If they had signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, they would have made much more significant concessions than this only in the auto sector thing that they're talking about right now.
What do you make of the few concessions that are in there? For instance, the idea that 40 to 45% of the parts that are going to be made to make it a North American car have to be at a minimum. Does that mean Mexicans will earn more, or does that mean more plants will stay in America?
Well, I mean, let's set aside the whole thing of this still needs to be negotiated, the details, and then it still needs to be voted on. Let's say all of that happened.
By Mexico and America, and if Canada's involved, by Canada.
You know, what we've seen with kind of international agreements of this form where you try to put in very specific one sector deals like that is accounting gimmickry. So I would not be surprised at all if in a way they called it raising the wages in Mexico, in a different way they split the firm into two and they say, oh no, this firm's paying $16 an hour to the two managers. It was that other firm that's paying less. I think the original NAFTA lowered tariffs on thousands of products. I mean, affected hundreds of industries.
You mean the NAFTA that's the worst deal that was ever negotiated, according to the president?
What he said is the worst deal. I got the sense that maybe the stall on the phone was the Mexican president kind of calling his friends and saying, whoa, you mean at the end of the day, Donald Trump was willing to sign a deal asking us to do almost nothing? He's trying to take it as fast as possible. Like, look, let's just sign it and move on to the next thing.
It is Tuesday, the 28th of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's right, folks. You keep that Old Bay in the cupboard. Only a little dash, a smidgen of Hungarian hot paprika makes all the difference. The Old Bay, leave it for the clam bake, okay? Please. It's for clam bake. All right. And I got to tell you, that Hungarian hot paprika is very versatile. Don't use a whole lot. It can be quite overpowering, just a smidgen. But I have to say, it transcends all cultures and can be utilized by all cultures. Indeed. Well, it's been quite a morning, and that's outside of all the news that's been going on. I have just been relentlessly attacked by the Green Party today. Well, it's because they think that I believe that the Russia-Trump news is much more important than everything else that's going on in the world. And I keep trying to tell these green people that, I don't know, I don't think I'm unique in being a liberal American who can hold many things in my head at once. That's why I'm a liberal American. And I'm not so sure that all of the people from the Greens who are attacking me this morning are actual people. I take it for granted that there's some piling on done by machine entities, shall we say. But I am not going to open up the Newsmax links that you send me. The Greens are supposed to be liberal? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know, a bunch of Russians would think, oh yeah, this liberal guy's going to open up a Newsmax article. It's laughable, all right? And that's probably why my follower list has decreased, because the Russian porn bots know that they can't get me in a compromising position. And the Russian trolls and bots of just regular ilk find that I can't be turned either, apparently. Whatever that means. I'm not saying that I'm above all of it, but they've tried before, way before all of this technology that we have now. Way back. I mean, when the Princess phone was still the go-to technology. All right. They tried then, and I don't know. It didn't quite work now, did it? Of course, you could also say that I didn't have any important information and that I wasn't going to get in any positions of importance, so why waste your time on me over many, many years? And all I have to say to that is, why do you keep trying? Oh, and to those of the Green Party ilk who think that, I might be obtuse and ill-informed, you might just take a gander at my timeline. Just a few items down, at least, please. Not that I know it all, but as I tell many family who call me a know-it-all, I'm not a know-it-all. I just know a lot. And isn't that the point? All right, enough of that ego-filled rant. Yikes! So much going on. Trump is getting backed into a wall, and there's I've been reading medical studies about what happens to narcissists when they lose their power. And they don't just go in and damage themselves. No, they're going to be breaking things in the room, and if people are there, they might get broken too. And I think we're seeing that in the way that this administration treats black and brown people, especially brown people escaping tragedies and violence who have come to the I don't know, the beacon on the hill for sanctuary, because that's what that beacon is there for. But we have the SA Gestapo running the border now, and I think there's going to be do we dare call it a purge? Because if there are not people going to jail, and usually I'm not an advocate of incarcerating the little guy. I mean, the Christie England, I understand that, well, she and her friends ought to have gone to jail. They ought to know better, all right? But they were given orders, shall we say, or at least carte blanche to do what they did. But generally, I'm not an advocate of the underlings only getting the incarceration ticket. But in this case, there ought to be some, people on the front lines who've been perpetrating this crime who ought to go to jail. And their supervisors and superiors, all the way up into the political class. I am sorry. Crimes have been committed, lies have been made, and lives have been lost. All right. Like I said, I'm just going off. All right. Well, what's on the menu today for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays? Well, we started off there about, you can call that trade deal anything, just do not call it NAFTA. And what does Trump have against Canada? I don't know. If he tried the poutine, I'm sure he would like it. He would like it to death. We could only hope. Our only hope now is keep eating the Big Macs. But if he got the poutine, I don't know, it might hasten the process a little bit. And I don't know. And then everybody goes, oh, well, then we'll have Mike Pence. And my rejoinder to that is, will we? We are liberal Americans. We can hold many things in our heads at the same time. All right. Oh, and we better not be these. Well, I know what's going to happen. The weak-kneed liberals are going to take over for a while and say, oh, we can't we can't be like them. Well, what? Putting people in jail is not being like them. I keep telling people that. The law is the law, and you follow the law. All right? The law is not liberal or conservative. It can be made that way, of course, but let's be clear. The law is the law. Like truth is the truth. I thought we figured this all out before Descartes. I think. I am? My God. In that order, too. All right, on the rest of the menu. Well, Italy's Donald Trump, that Servino guy, I think. Yeah, Matteo. Well, he's being investigated for violating immigrants' rights. So it can be done. People can be held accountable, and they can go to jail. Sometimes escorted. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice, no relation, is accused of stacking the state Supreme Court with Republicans. Well, of course he would. He's a Republican. And the GOP fears Congress will actually do its oversight job after the midterm blue wave. Well, we better make sure that blue wave happens, okay? We can't just count on it. Please. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where a Florida Trump Tower owner avoided personal conversations with Donnie Two Scoops out of fear that he'd be asked for money. Donnie asks people for money? Oh, my, yikes. Mm-hmm. And Tiger Woods really doesn't want to discuss his relationship with Trump. And apparently he's too hungry to even talk about racism. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. believe any Green Party member... You know what? It's Russians. Only the Russians would think a liberal American would open up a Newsmax article. Give me a effing break. They think we're as stupid as the Colt 45 people. All right? And there's not very many of those. But they're pretty damn stupid. All right. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page, the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And if you would, please, do send her some money. She needs it to be able to affect the finalization of that hardware and software update. And she's only a couple $100 off. It wouldn't take much. Please, please. To the leftish of the chat room link there at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll then find our Netroots Radio donate and contribute buttons. And for those of you who have been making recurring payments, I have to check with Tom on this, but you may have to start the recurring payment again. If you would, please. We've made the changeover to an official account that's duly monitored by the proper authorities. The improper ones may be monitoring it too from afar, but generally there's some safeguards to keep them from doing anything, usually. But we'll keep them out because we're that way. But all that stated, you may, and if you would, recur, please. It helps. And this is serious. We're unable to do this without you, and your generosity has been keeping the lights blinking. And if you would continue doing it, we would be, well, much obliged, because we are Resistance Radio, and we take this work quite seriously, even though we have a jocular, gallows humor approach to it, shall we say. That's why it's all a joking around. It's not a shock jock thing. It's gallows humor. It's the only way to survive the tragedies that just keep happening over and over and over, that all you're left with is just to, laugh, love, and joke about the follies of life. Mm-hmm. Well, you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Check us out over there on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's, where I can be found as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We are over there on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, yeah. And podcasts of the show can be had by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right. First article here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of Think Progress by D. Pervaz. And it's Matteo Salvini. I don't know why I was calling him Salvio. Oh, my God. Salvini. Yeah, he's one of these white nationalist, we'll call him a Nazi, a fascist. And it's in the model of the Austrian guy that's moving his way up over there, too. And it's weird. I wonder if he's got one of those weird little mustaches. Austria and all. He might. And they do wear lederhosen up there. I've been there. They do. Not just for fun, but for real. Yikes. Since coming into power in May, Italy's new far-right coalition government has made a point of turning away ships carrying migrants, as reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Even ones operated by humanitarian missions. And I would say especially the ones that are handled by humanitarian missions. Especially anyone helping a refugee has to be evil. On Sunday, though, Italy allowed for the disembarkation of 150 migrants from a rescue ship that had been docked in the Sicilian port of Catania as Italy pushed for other EU countries to accept some of the mostly Eritrean asylum seekers on board. Initially, only women and children were allowed to disembark on Saturday, with some refusing to do so, fearing permanent separation from their families. It's a feature, not a bug. This is happening around the world, and I'm not interested in the chicken and egg argument. Did we do it first, or did we follow suit? The fact is that it's happening, and it's happening everywhere, and it's a playbook. Albania and Ireland offered to take 40 to 45 of the people on board after an urgent call from the UN's refugee agency on Saturday, which said that frightened people who may be in need of international protection should not be caught in the maelstrom of politics. Allowing ships carrying hundreds of migrants to remain either stranded at sea or stuck at port is all part of the anti-immigrant, anti-refugee playbook of the country's new Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini, who loves his President Donald Trump and is in fact seen as the European Union's Trump. Salvini, who is also Italy's deputy prime minister, is being investigated by a Sicilian prosecutor for abuse of office, kidnapping, and illegal arrest. Echoing Trump's response to the U.S. Justice Department investigation into the links between his campaign and the Russian effort to influence the 2016 presidential election, Salvini told supporters at a rally that being investigated for defending the rights of Italians is a disgrace. I'm looking at you, Green Party people. I'm looking at you. What are you doing really about the humanitarian crises around the world? What are you doing about it? Sitting and having dinner at Putin's table? Is that what you're doing? Is that enough? You can sit back and complain, oh, you're just obsessed with Russia. No, it's all part of a whole. There's a maelstrom of conflicts here. And solving one doesn't solve it all, does it? Offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is another article out of Think Progress, this time by Kyla Mandel. Well, critics are calling this attempt by Jim Justice to stack the Supreme Court in West Virginia as a coup. Is it hyperbole? Well, I'm not so sure that it is. For the first time in history of any U.S. state, the entire Supreme Court of West Virginia was impeached this month. State lawmakers voted to impeach the justices over alleged wasteful spending, incompetence, and potential criminal misconduct. And what did they do? Well, they ruled against Republicans because of the Republicans' wasteful spending, incompetence, and criminal misconduct. Tit for tat now, isn't it? It's exactly what happened, and yes, I know people will say you just hate the whole Putin thing, but it's exactly what Putin did. It's almost like a playbook. On Saturday, the state's governor, Jim Justice, no relation. You know, the reason I have Justice as a name is because it's my grandmother's maiden name, and it's my middle name. Yeah, I know, Royal Justice. This is before the hippies. It wasn't during the beatniks. What were they thinking? Sitting around in their little black turtlenecks, berets, and smoking the guitons. Even back then. Well, Jim Justice announced that he picked two politicians from his Republican Party to temporarily fill vacancies on the court. Announcing the appointments, Justice said the state needs, without any question, a conservative court. Well, of course. These damn liberal courts, like Eisenhower Republicans, commies all apparently, are just ruling too much about this 19th Amendment and people have equal rights and who do they even call people? We want our country back. You can't call those things people. And they have a full equal right to vote. It's bad enough that we have to go to Walmart and see them there. It's bad. The two Republican lawmakers are replacing two of the justices who were elected to the court as Democrats, Robin Davis and Menace Ketchum. Davis resigned on August 14th, one day after the impeachment vote, while Ketchum had resigned at the end of July prior to being charged with federal wire fraud. The three other court justices are set to face impeachment trial resuming in mid-September in the state Senate should they be found guilty. The state governor can appoint the replacements, who would serve until the 2020 election. No one has defended the lavish spending by the justices, including an office renovation with a $32,000 blue suede sofa. Well, the other sofa kept getting lint on their robes. And it was just so unseemly. However, the calls for impeachment have been led mostly by Republicans because they're disaster capitalists. They see a problem, get rid of them all. Now, of course, the Democrats don't see it as the same way as Justice does, Governor Justice. They, Belinda Biafore, chair of the state Democratic Party, said in a statement, Justice's picks to fill the Supreme Court means more corruption and political positioning from Republican leadership in West Virginia. Not only do Amistad and Jenkins, those are the people that are going to be seated, lack necessary experience, but by aligning with Justice, they have proven that they are nothing more than political peas in a pod and will continue to make decisions based on politics and not people. And I don't think they're going to throw away the $32,000 blue suede sofa. The Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Share Blue Media by Dan Desai Martin. A leaked memo shows that Republicans are afraid if Democrats take over the House of Reps, Congress will actually reassert itself as a co-equal branch of government instead of the lackeys that they are now. Yeah. What has Republicans so scared? Well, Democrats are planning to investigate the rampant scandals of the Trump era. In other words, Democrats want Congress to actually do its job. Thanks to their control of Congress, Republicans have blocked most of the Democrats' investigative requests. Axios notes that, which was first reported on the Axios first reported on that leaked Republican memo. Republicans made a list of issues they expect Democrats to investigate if a blue wave returns the Democratic Party to power in November. Democrats need to gain 23 seats to retake control of the House. And the list shows Republicans are scrambling to prepare for the worst. Well, the worst includes investigations into topics like Trump's possible violations of the Constitution's Emoluments Clause. Possible? He nixed and made it so that the FBI couldn't build a building that they had already had assigned to build long before Trump ever took office. And Trump stopped that because it was too close to the building that he owned. What? Well, of course, the FBI. When you're a mobster, do you really want the FBI next door? I don't think so. Trump's payment to Stormy Daniels, which violated campaign finance laws, Trump's discussion of classified info at Mar-a-Lago, White House staff members' use of personal email, ethical violations of cabinet secretaries, the administration's cruel family separation policy, and the Bosch disaster response in Puerto Rico. Green Party, listen to me. I don't really see much here in the way of Russia and the DNC's obsession with Russia. I see a lot of violations of really just American law, independent of the counterintelligence issue that's been going on with Trump. And I should remind you, green people sitting at Putin's table, that has been under investigation since at least the late 80s. And I was making mention of it when way before Trump even failed with his stakes at the sharper image. We better get on with our break. The rest of the article is not terribly long, but the rest of the article can be found in the show notes and links diary at Daily Kos, so do check it out. We will go on our break, as I mentioned, and when we come back, we'll go through weather from around the world, and then finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Crazy Rich Fun. Despite being hailed as a triumph of representation, Crazy Rich Asians is at its heart a familiar love story about a woman of modest means unknowingly falling in love with a wealthy man, much to the disapproval of his family. Constance Wu, best known to TV viewers for her role on Fresh Off the Boat, steps nicely into the Cinderella role as Rachel, a self-made economics professor who has no idea that her charming boyfriend Nick, played by newcomer Henry Golding, is a scion of one of Singapore's wealthiest families. It's not until he invites her to his best friend's wedding back home that she discovers he isn't merely well off, but, well, crazy rich. Of course, not everybody loves Rachel the way Nick does. In particular, Nick's mother, Eleanor, played by Michelle Yeoh, comes to the conclusion early on that she will never accept Rachel. Indeed, in her prim suits and tidy hairdos, Eleanor appears to be channeling the ladies of the Victorian era, much admired in aristocratic Singapore when she's ordering the help around or telling her son what to do with his life. Thankfully, with the help of a fairy godmother in the guise of Nick's over-the-top cousin Oliver and Rachel's old college friend, Go Peek Lin, played by a scene-stealing Awkwafina, this fairy tale will have a happy ending. It's not a spoiler to say that it does, because we're not sharing the details. While criticism can be leveled that the film fails to seriously look at class issues or go into why an NYU economics professor like Rachel would be seen as frivolous in the eyes of Nick's mother, the best thing about this movie is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Crazy Rich Asians is meant to be fun, and in that effort, it succeeds 1,000 times over. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Debbie Ponchner. Pineapples. Just thinking about this delicious tropical fruit, rich in vitamin C, might make your mouth water. But have you ever stopped to think where the peel and other waste from this crop end up? We do. Here in the small country of Costa Rica, the world's largest producer of pineapples. Pineapple production generates about 4.5 million tons of crop residues every year in our Central American nation. And that waste is tough stuff. The plant is made of strong cellulose that takes a long time to biodegrade, and most of it is either burnt or ends up dumped in open forests where disease-causing mosquitoes and fungi thrive off its high sugar content. But hidden in pineapple peels is a treasure of nanomaterials. Scientists at Costa Rica's National Laboratory of Nanotechnology, Lanotec, have been extracting valuable nanocellulose from the peel and stubble of the pineapple. This nanocellulose can be used in the pharmaceutical, food, and medical industries. And it turns out that while harvesting that nanocellulose, you can also get rosette-like silica-based microparticles. These tiny traces have potential as reinforcement in adhesives, in the biomedical field, and even as a source of silica for fertilizers. Scientists from Lanotec describe these applications in the journal Scientific Reports. Jose Vega Baudrit is the director of Lanotec and one of the authors of the paper.
Pineapple residue is something that has been studied a lot, but nobody had seen this particle in the skin of the fruit.
It was chemical engineer and material scientist Gendry Corrales Ureña who noticed the silica-based microparticles.
I began to study the plant, to make the cuts, to see what it had. And incredibly, after doing the synthesis, I began to see those rosettes, like flowers, that did not fall apart under duress. It was wonderful. We had thousands, millions of the same structures left over.
The pineapple silica differs from silica nanospheres that are synthesized in labs for various applications.
This is a silica that the pineapple plant processes on its own, and it is of very high purity.
Most commercial fertilizers use silica, and Corrales Ureña's main interest in the rosette-like silica-based microparticles is as a fertilizer component. The next steps in that line of research will be to determine if parts other than the peels also have silica nanoparticles, and to develop an efficient fertilizer using them. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Debbie Punchner.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. America's founders learned about government from their experiences in self-government as subjects of the British Empire. They also learned about government by reading history and philosophy, particularly that of ancient Greece and Rome, and the works of 16th and 17th century philosophers. Their ancient influences included the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Roman statesman Cicero, among many others. Aristotle was a student of the philosopher Plato and the teacher of Alexander the Great. Considered one of the great philosophers in the Western intellectual tradition, he wrote on subjects as diverse as government, logic, rhetoric, ethics, poetry, and biology. Cicero wrote extensively about politics and philosophy, much of his work focusing on the defense and improvement of the Roman Republic. Cicero's De Officiis, a profound meditation on morality and moral duty, including moral principles as applied to public life, deeply influenced Western civilization since its writing in 44 BC. De Officiis was so influential that when the printing press was invented, it was the second book to be printed after the Bible. Cicero's ideas on the importance of duty and sacrificing for the common good were very influential in the colonies. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Senator John McCain will be memorialized for 5 days this week, with services planned in his home state of Arizona and also in the nation's capital, where he served as a lawmaker for more than 30 years. And this just in, guys, let's show the live pictures of the White House. Guess what's just happened? The flag has now been lowered to half staff. So it had been lowered, it was raised, now it's officially lowered again. We have reached out to the White House for clarification on why it has been lowered again, presumably out of respect for the late senator. As soon as we find out, we'll let you know.
CNN's Brooke Baldwin Monday afternoon as she noticed the White House flag had been lowered again to half staff. Donald Trump caved and issued a formal statement honoring the late Senator John McCain following 2 days of intense blowback over his petty reaction to the Republican's death. Quote, despite our differences on policy and politics, I respect Senator John McCain's service to our country, Trump begrudgingly wrote in a statement after AmVets, one of the country's largest veterans groups, and the American Legion and others blasted his initial lackluster response. The flags will remain at half staff until after McCain's internment on Sunday. John McCain left a farewell letter, which was read publicly Monday by his longtime aide and spokesman, Rick Davis.
We weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all the corners of the globe. We weaken it when we hide behind walls rather than tear them down, when we doubt the power of our ideals rather than trust them to be the great force for change they have always been. 10 years ago, I had the privilege to concede defeat in the election for president. I want to end my farewell to you with heartfelt faith in Americans that I felt so powerfully that evening. I feel it powerfully still. Do not despair of our present difficulties. We believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history. Farewell, fellow Americans. God bless you, and God bless America.
As the Senate convened for the first time since John McCain's Saturday death, his former Senate colleagues took to the floor Monday to remember him. Here's Georgia's Senator Johnny Isakson with a not-so-veiled comment aimed at the president.
I don't know what's going to be said in the next few days about John McCain, by whomever it's going to be said. I don't know what's going to be done. But anybody who, in any way, tarnishes the reputation of John McCain deserves a whipping. Because most of the ones who would do the wrong thing about John McCain didn't have the guts to do the right thing when it was their turn. We need to remember that. So I would say to the president or anybody in the world, it's time to pause and say, this was a great man. He gave everything for us. We owe him nothing less than the respect that he earned.
Paul Manafort's defense team held talks with prosecutors about a possible plea deal ahead of their client's second trial next month.
Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was reportedly seeking a deal in his upcoming trial. The Wall Street Journal reporting that while jurors in Virginia were deliberating tax and bank fraud charges, Manafort's defense team was trying to work out an agreement with prosecutors in his second trial that is slated to begin here in Washington, D.C. next month. The Journal reports the talks stalled after the special counsel Robert Mueller raised issues with the potential deal.
A federal court in North Carolina ruled for the second time this year that the state's congressional map was drawn to so severely benefit Republicans that it violates the Constitution. The court notably left open the possibility of implementing a new congressional map in time for this year's midterm elections. In an awkward photo op with the president of Mexico on speakerphone, Trump on Monday announced a new U.S.-Mexico trade deal following months of negotiations to recast the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which also encompasses Canada.
I like to call this deal the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. I think it's an elegant name. I think NAFTA has a lot of bad connotations for the United States because it was a ripoff. It was a deal that was a horrible deal for our country. And I think it's got a lot of bad connotations to a lot of people. And so we will probably, you and I will agree to the name. We will see whether or not we decide to put up Canada or just do a separate deal with Canada if they want to make the deal. The simplest deal is more or less already made.
MSNBC's Ali Velshi tries to explain what happened there.
We had simultaneous translation from the Spanish to English for the Mexican president. Unfortunately, we didn't have simultaneous translation for the English to English because the president made not a whole lot of sense there. I got Ron Insana to help me out with this. That was a little hard to interpret.
It was. It's a point of understanding is the way President Nieto described it. And so that sounds like a framework agreement that's where details still have to be filled in.
It's not a replacement for NAFTA.
It is not. Congress would have to approve that. Also, Canada would have to join in that process as well and be signatory to it. NAFTA remains in effect. Now, the president can repeal and replace, but it would take congressional approval and all three countries to agree to a framework like that.
Tuesday is primary day in Florida and Arizona. Get out and vote. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. This broadcast is on holiday until September 10th, but instead of running repeats, we've asked some go-to foreign policy experts what they'll be paying attention to in the weeks to come. Jeff Thale is the Vice President for Programs at the Washington Office on Latin America. He's watching continued violence in Nicaragua at the hands of the country's security forces after demonstrators first took to the streets this spring to protest pension reforms.
From April through late July, we saw something like between 300 and 450 people killed in street demonstrations, pretty much government-sponsored repression in response to those. The level of violence is going down, but I think we're going to see a new sort of lower phase of repression, and we're going to see continuing international pressures.
Given America's history in Nicaragua, first occupying the country in the early 1900s and then supporting Contra groups there in the 1980s, Thale says the U.S. is wise to avoid being perceived as meddling in Nicaragua's affairs. Doing so would only benefit President Daniel Ortega. But that doesn't mean the U.S. needs to stay completely silent.
So if the U.S. message is defend human rights, investigate crimes, punish those responsible, support the right to peaceful dissent, dialogue about the political problems, Nicaraguans can figure out what ought to happen in that dialogue, as opposed to something that's, once again, the U.S. calls for regime change in Nicaragua. Ultimately, the solution to the political dialogue probably ends with President Ortega and the Vice President Rosario Murillo resigning. But I don't think it's the role of the United States publicly or visibly to be calling for that. I think that's what Nicaraguans need to work out in their dialogue.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, we always begin with weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 52 degrees and sunny with a blue sky. There's something wrong. There's a blue sky up there. What is that? Winds are out of the southwest at about 2 miles an hour. Hardly negligible, if you ask me. Will, of course, increase to its usual. I apologize. It will remain light and variable throughout the day out of the southwest, which means we'll be a tad warmer than yesterday. We're going to be in about the low 90s. So yesterday it was supposed to be the upper 80s to low 90s. Today it'll be low 90s. And we'll see if we get to the mid 90s. I don't think so. Angle of the sun, I think, is doing what it's doing. So we'll remain sunny. We'll be clear tonight with a low of around 60, and winds will remain light and variable. Then they will pick up tomorrow and shift out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. So we got a southerly air mass coming up right now, so that's very nice. Pressure is holding at 29.92 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 68%. Grass pollen is low if you happen to be affected by that particular kind of pollen here in southern Oregon, or if you're passing through. Air quality index is good at 31 parts per million, down just a tad from yesterday, and the daytime UV index remains in the high range at 7. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planned these purchase personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 69 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 78 and sunny, but they do have a high heat index warning, and that could impact some critical infrastructure. But usually what it does, it kills old people, so be careful. Rome is 83 and sunny. Kiev is 80 degrees and fair. Kabul is 83 and fair. No wedding parties today, please. you'll live longer. Hong Kong is 77 degrees with rain. Tokyo is 80 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 46 and clear. San Francisco, California is 57 and cloudy. And New York is 86 degrees and fair. Though you too have a high temperature, high heat warning, so do take care. And of course, you will be cool. You are New York. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Raw Story by Noor Al-Sabai. Now, I will confess, I have been in the environs of very old money. And one of the complaints that I always heard from the old money types was how boorish the new money people were, like specifically that one Donald Trump, the most boorish of them all. And I couldn't disagree. I know that's a double negative, but I wasn't going to. I wasn't going to disagree with them. I agreed with them. That's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it is when new money actually considers you to be boorish. Well, I guess it means what it means. The Miami area owner of Trump Towers 3 once said he avoided a personal relationship with Donald Trump because he feared he would be asked for money. The Miami Herald reported on Monday that mega developer Michael Deezer revealed his anxieties when he testified in 2016 about his relationship to then presidential candidate Donald Trump. Trump was also my associate for many years, and we didn't want to talk personal because I was afraid he was going to ask for money, Deezer said during a June 2016 investigation into former North Miami Beach Mayor George Vallejo. The Israeli developer acknowledged that he'd learned his lesson from doing business with Trump before. As much as Donald Trump has, and I'm a little guy from here, Deezer continued, I learned a long time ago. Don't go personal with Donald Trump.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Lindsay Gibbs of Think Progress brings us this last offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Now, the problem with corporate sponsorship, of course, in an individual sport like golf, means that if you're a recognizable commodity, brand is everything. And so it's a tough row to hoe, I suppose. If you're trying to make a comeback after major back surgery and you really don't want to offend, well, let's be clear, the white superstructure that, well, is the game of golf. Tiger Woods is back to being a regular presence on the PGA Tour, a welcome sign for both casual and die-hard golf fans who have watched the 14-time major champion struggle with back injuries for most of the past decade. But the sports world is very different place in 2018 compared to the last time he was regularly in the spotlight. Woods finds himself at the front and center of a new political climate, and he doesn't seem ready to rise to the challenge. I might say that Michael Jordan was criticized for very similar behaviors. Who wants to lose your Nike contract? And it's not, I suppose, so much about losing the Nike contract. Yeah, well, it is. But sales are everything? I don't know. Woods finished 40th at the Northern Trust Tournament on Sunday in New Jersey, and he was asked by reporters to describe his professional and personal relationship with Donald Trump. Woods responded blandly, "Well, I've known Donald for a number of years. We played golf together. We've had dinner together. I've known him pre-presidency and obviously during his presidency." When Woods was asked specifically how he would explain his friendly relationship with Trump to people of color and immigrants who were threatened by Trump and his policies, Woods pivoted to a riff on respecting the office. Well, he is the President of the United States, Woods said. You have to respect the office, no matter who's in the office. You may dislike personality or the politics, but we all must respect the office. Finally, Woods was asked, do you have anything more broadly to say about the state and the discourse of race relations? Shockingly enough, Woods did not. Well, I might tell Tiger, the whole reason that Trump is being investigated is because of respect for the office of the presidency, no matter who is in it. It's not about respect for the person occupying the office. And this is the mistake that people make all the time. Respect is earned. He's nothing more, or she are nothing more than regular Americans in the end, even though this guy purports to be a billionaire. Yeah, right. Regardless, respect is still earned. Respect for the office is another thing. Okay? Because the office represents something. And if this fellow falls under the aegis of committing crimes, respect for the office does not protect the personage, no matter who it is. And we know why Tiger didn't mention about race relations. He's playing golf. All right, we're going to get out of here because we are at the end of our broadcast period for the day. We will be back tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Oh, yeah, the Pope. The Pope's in Latin America. All right. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure. And stay tuned for more breaking news on At Risk Radio as it happens. Breaking right now. It's happening right now. Breaking news. So stay tuned to that. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux au déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.